The sun began to set on the island of Sodor, disappearing behind the hills at the slate quarry, covering it in nothing but pure shadow. Although most of the workmen had gone home, the quarry was far from quiet, as a well-known source of groans and complaints was looming about. Duncan chuffed around the sidings, pushing freight cars into a train to take back to the transfer yards at Crovan's Gate. He was tired and, not surprisingly, grumpy. It had been the quarry all day. No other freight, no passengers, and certainly no rest. Just slate, slate, slate. Still, he pressed on, knowing this was his last train for today, and he would soon return to the comfort of the sheds, assuming, of course, that his favorite spot had been taken. Just as he shunted his last few cars, he began to hear puffing from behind. Someone was entering the quarry.
Who's there?
Duncan tried to sound firm, but upon hearing no response, he felt a little nervous. Suddenly, he gave out a cry of complete terror as a shrill whistle echoed across the quarry.
Steady on, Duncan. It's only me.
Duncan's fear quickly vanished, now replaced with anger as Sir Handel backed into a siding with some empty cars. His eyes were almost tearing up with laughter.
Oh, knock it off, Sir Handel. Do you have anything else better to do?
I'm sorry, Duncan, but I just couldn't resist.
Ha! That prank on the bridge was 2 weeks ago. Just leave it be already.
Ah, and yet, your reaction just then proves its effects haven't ended. Who would think a confident engine such as you would still not get over a ghost story that isn't even real?
Duncan scoffed and fumed out of the quarry. Ever since Duncan's crew scared him at the old iron bridge, Sir Handel took great pleasure in teasing and taunting him about the incident. Duncan knew his boasting was what led to the trick, but all the same, he wished everyone would just forget it and leave him in peace. The crew and Rusty, who made up the ghost story of the bridge, had since apologized, but that didn't seem to stop Sir Handel. He was still chuckling as he and Duncan returned to the sheds. At last, Skarloey stepped in and spoke severely to him.
Please, Sir Handel, will you stop with the torment? Poor Duncan has clearly had enough of it.
Oh, come now, Skarloey. It's only a bit of fun. It's not my fault Duncan fell for that ghost story that easily. It should have been obviously fake from the start. Surely if an engine did fall off that bridge, it would have been a long-lasting story that would have scarred this railway forever.
That is irrelevant. You would be laughing right now if you were in Duncan's position.
On the contrary, Rusty, if my crew tried to pull that trick on me, I wouldn't give them the satisfaction.
Duncan said nothing and just scowled. Skarloey felt sorry for him, and could tell he was going to snap any minute if Sir Handel wasn't put in his place. He then thought of an idea. It was a long shot, but it would shut Sir Handel up for a little while.
Believe me, Sir Handel, if you knew the stories I've heard from this part of the island, you wouldn't feel so confident.
You can try, Skarloey, but I'm sure there's no ghost story you know that could frighten me.
You misunderstand me, Sir Handel. I'm not talking about ghosts.
Sir Handel perked up, seemingly curious to that response. Rusty and even Duncan appeared interested too.
What do you mean?
Well, the thing is about ghost stories is that it's never really clear if they're real or not. There may very well be spirits around us, or it's all made up to give us a good scare. However, not every scary tale, as you may put it, is about ghosts. Some are about people, or other creatures, that are very much alive.
By now, many pairs of eyes were fixed on the old engine. They were silent and waited for him to continue.
One such story in particular relates to the very place I'm named after, Skarloey Lake.
All right, Skarloey, you have my interest.
Yes, please tell us.
Very well. Mind yourselves, youngsters, for I am only telling you this story once.
Skarloey paused impressively. The engines held their breaths, all wide-eyed, especially Duncan. Unlike the others, however, he was feeling a little shaky. While Rusty's story didn't happen, the events that occurred in it still spooked him a bit, so the idea of a story that was real made him very uncomfortable, though he tried not to show it.
Long ago, before this railway was built, Skarloey was merely a small mountain village, surrounded by lakes and woods. Everybody who lived there knew each other well, and there were rarely any severe conflicts. However, Skarloey in those days was a lesser-known place, once nicknamed the Secret Sanctuary by people far from the past. The villagers didn't explore much of the woods. It was so huge that the risk of getting lost was very high. One day, a couple was in the market, buying fresh fruits and vegetables. Suddenly, the wife tugged at the husband's arm in fear, pointing at the woods. A man was stumbling towards them. He looked very weary, as if he was going to fall at any second, and his clothes were viciously torn. But worst of all was that all over him were nothing but deep red scars. Some of the villagers spotted the sight as well, and they, along with the husband, helped the man into a house, while the wife went to the doctor. The doctor concluded that the man was scratched by an animal of some kind multiple times. But even then, no one could think of a local animal that could be this vicious. So, when the man seemed to have somewhat recovered, the doctor asked him what had happened. Instead of replying, the man simply screamed and was shaking violently. I was told he did this for at least a few minutes before finally passing out. It was assumed that he was too traumatized to speak of the incident, and that he would possibly need a week until he could explain it. A week went by, then another and another, but every time someone questioned the man, he always gave the same horrifying reaction. Everyone eventually agreed that he would never be able to talk about it, and that they should never bring it up to him again. The husband, however, still wanted answers, so one day he decided to venture into the woods, towards the same direction the man had came from. His wife and many of the villagers were worried, but he assured them that he would stay safe and return to them. A few hours went by, and he did indeed return. I'm sorry to see, however, that he came back in the same condition as the man. Torn clothes and scratches all over. Unlike the first victim, however, he was able to explain what happened after a few days of recovering. As he was walking in the woods, he began to hear strange growling sounds, like they were coming from a dog, a hound perhaps. And yet there was something very unnatural about those sounds that he couldn't describe. Then suddenly, the husband was pushed to the ground by an attacker that came from the trees. He wasn't sure if he was right in what he saw, but the creature that held him and tore his clothes and scratched him all over looked almost human. It was skinny, had thin arms, long, sharp nails. Eventually, this nightmarish beast ceased its attack and crawled away, allowing the husband to limp away, while wincing from his injuries. No one could figure out what this creature was, why it attacked, or why it let its victims live. The most common belief was that this creature roamed the entirety of Skarloey Woods. and attacked any outsiders to protect it. It seemed like the most logical thing, but no one could really be sure. What all the villagers agreed on, though, was that it was very unsafe to enter those woods, alone or otherwise. So they always stayed away, and that remained a tradition for several years. Then, our railway would eventually be built, and myself and Renias would come to the island. This all gave a lot of attention to the small village of Skarloey and the other local places that we traveled to. Many people were eager to explore the lakes and woods of Skarloey and sometimes adventure beyond into the thick, uninhabited wilderness. However, they were always warned of the creature that roamed there. Some would listen and heed their words, and bright they were too. Very, very bright they were. To those who didn't listen.
Skarloey paused once again.
Well, sometimes people would emerge from the woods, clothes torn and scars all over. Some would give a description similar to the one that husband gave all those years ago. Others, too traumatized to speak of it. No one had ever gotten physical proof of what all these people claimed, like photographs or recorded films, so no one could confirm this creature as existent. They couldn't confirm its existence as being true fact. Some believed the tale to be some long-lasting scandal made up to attract attention to the village. All the same, the fact that these events happened not only long ago, but also in more recent years, to people who never grew up in the village, was very concerning indeed. It remains a mystery to this day. But the children of those villagers, as well as their children, they still give the warnings of the unusual, disturbing creature of their village of Skarloey.
Skarloey finished to find all the engines staring at him, their eyes filled with amazement and, unsurprisingly, shock. As he had hoped, even Sir Handel looked very stunned.
Well, Skarloey, that's, quite a story. Certainly not like a typical ghost story. Though you don't actually think it's true, do you?
Like I said, Sir Handel, it remains a mystery.
Silence fell over the sheds. All the engines were lost within their minds, all filled with thoughts and questions. Some weren't sure of how much truth laid within the tale. Others, however, felt fear building up. Eventually, one by one, the engines drifted into sleep. Skarloey and Duncan were the only ones still awake. Skarloey looked at Sir Handel, then smiled at Duncan.
That seemed to shut him up. You shouldn't have to worry anymore now.
Duncan, realizing what Skarloey had meant, smiled back, showing his appreciation. And soon, both engines closed their eyes. The next morning saw every engine slowly waking up from their slumbers, all the steam engines feeling warmth around their boilers. Their fires were lit, their water bubbled, and steam began flowing out their funnels. Sir Handel was the first to go. His term at the quarry was upon him. The others had already prepared themselves for the inevitable storm of grumpiness.
And to think I once thought the coaches were the worst thing here. And not long after my repaint, too. Oh, to be ruined already.
Well, be gentle and treat the trucks with some respect. You might just make it out clean, Boyle.
Respect for trucks? What an absurd idea.
Oh, suit yourself. Though don't act surprised if you get negative results. I only did warn you once.
No more words came from Sir Handel as he bumpily left the sheds. Duncan watched him, snickering quietly.
It would serve him right if his paint did get ruined. after all his teasing. He better have stopped with that nonsense, or I'll make sure he's sorry.
Hey, Duncan, settle down. This is a railway, not a factory. You can't do your cockfighting here, my boy. It seems my story has taken his mind away from all of that, so you should be fine.
I hope you're right, but it's just so frustrating. I know I may have deserved it, but it gets so tiring. Ugh. Maybe I just need to learn to ignore them and focus on my work.
Yes, that would be the sensible thing to do, my boy.
Thoughtfully, Duncan rolled out of the shed and set off for his first train. Sir Handel was also very pensive. He puffed up the line with a few empty cars behind him and arrived at the junction near Skarloey station, just before the quarry line. He watched as the points moved from one side to the other in a very stuttery manner. Continuing on, Sir Handel had been rather reflective in regards to the last few days, on Skarloey's story, as well as all his teasing towards Duncan.
Oh, it was just for a bit of humor. There was no harm behind it.
But then he sighed heavily.
I suppose it was getting a bit too much. I'll apologize when I next see him. That will put everything right.
He looked around. The first section of the quarry line went deep into the woods of Skarloey before reaching the more rocky parts of the mountains. Skarloey's tail came back to him. He peered deep into the tall trees and deep bushes. A few squirrels ran back and forth on the branches, and some deer scanned the ground. Nothing unusual whatsoever. Sir Handel chuckled to himself.
Oh, goodness, what's wrong with me today? It's just a story, an intriguing story, but a story nonetheless.
All the same, there was a teensy-weensy seed of doubt planted somewhere within his smoke box. The day was long and exhausting for Sir Handel, but finally the orange glow of evening had arrived, and his last train of the day was ready. The quarry was almost entirely deserted, save for a few workmen cleaning up equipment and approaching their cars for their journey home. Despite his best efforts, Sir Handel never got the chance to speak to Duncan all day. He felt disappointed, but knew that tonight he could deliver his apology in the sheds. It was just a case of getting there, of course. With a toot of his whistle, Sir Handel moved slowly off, pulling his freight cars full of slate away from the quarry. Just as the train crossed the old iron bridge, the driver and fireman looked closely at the water gauges.
Oh dear. Didn't realise how little water we had. We forgot to top up the quarry. Never mind. We can do so at the top station.
Little did they realize they wouldn't get that far. Creeping through the almost blackened woods, Sir Handel could see the points at the junction straight ahead. But there was also something else. A signalman, waving a red lamp frantically. The driver put the brakes on, and Sir Handel slowed to a stop.
What's the matter?
I'm afraid my points are jammed. I've been having trouble with them all day, but now they're stuck hard against you.
Oh, bother. Well, how can I get out? Won't they be fixed?
Not until morning. You'll have to return to the quarry and stay there for the night. Oh, that won't be possible. We're well low on water, and there's no way we'll have enough to go back.
Sir Handel's face fell into complete dismay.
But that means I'm stuck. Here.
Looks to be the case, old boy. Don't worry, you should be fine out here. I'll phone the Fat Controller, and once the points are fixed, they'll send an engine to rescue you.
Well, no choice in the matter, is there?
And so Sir Handel's crew went about dropping his fire. The flames were dampened, the water stopped bubbling, and steam ceased to flow out of his funnel. Once that was done, the driver, fireman, and signalman went away. Sir Handel sat quietly, the sun now completely non-existent, and the bright light that was the moon could be viewed through the tangled mess of branches above. An owl, somewhere in the distance, made its presence known. Sir Handel wasn't sure why, but the idea of sleep wasn't on his mind. He had been working hard all day. It was never-ending. Surely, then, he would be in desperate need of sleep. But he wasn't. Was it the breeze running through the woods? Perhaps that owl was too loud for him. No, it definitely wasn't those. Unusually, Sir Handel felt rather focused, very wary and on high alert. He was attentive to even the quietest of noises. But what was he on high alert for? Besides the numerous animals that dominated the woods, the little engine was alone. Neither human nor engine was around. So what was wrong? Skarloey's story.
Come now, Sir Handel. Don't be so silly. It's just a story, nothing more.
But was it just a story?
Well, of course it is. There's no way it actually happened. That creature isn't real. Not real at all. It's all fake.
Was it, though?
Yes, I know it is. Skarloey probably just made it up as well, just as a scare.
Did he really?
He did. He did. It's just a story. Just a story. It's not real. It's not.
He froze. A chill went through his boiler. The nearby bushes were shaking viciously. It was then that Sir Handel could hear a low, groaning sound. A sound he had never heard before.
Who was there?
No words came back, only that haunting groan. Then he saw a shape emerge from behind the bushes. The overall body, the arms, legs, and head, it looked human. But the way it moved, the way it crawled like an animal, it was unnatural. Sir Handel quivered uncontrollably. Fear built within him. He wanted to run. He wanted to escape. He wanted nothing more than to be in the warm, cozy sheds, surrounded by the comfort of the other engines. But he couldn't. He had neither a fire nor a crew. But there had to be a way out of this. There just had to be. Suddenly, there was a whistle. A deep one that was all too familiar.
Duncan?
It was indeed the number 6 engine of the narrow-gauge railway. He emerged from the darkness, a line of vans and flatbeds behind him. He got closer and spotted Sir Handel.
Sir Handel, what are you doing?
Oh, Duncan, I'm so glad to see you. I need help. There's some creature in the bushes. I think it's going to hurt me, and I can't get out. Please, Duncan, please help me.
To Sir Handel's shock, Duncan didn't slow down. He kept moving.
You're not getting to me this time, Sir Handel.
What?
I'm sick of your constant teasing and laughing at me. I thought you would have stopped by now, but you're still at it.
No, Duncan, this isn't a trick, I swear. There's something there. Can't you see it?
You're not fooling me.
Oh, Duncan, please. I'm serious. The points are stuck against me. But surely you could pull me with a chain or something. I don't care if I derail. Drag me along the ground if you have to, but please. I want to get out of here.
Shut up, Sir Randall. You have been a thorn in my side for 2 whole weeks. Well, I've had enough. I'm not going to fall for your stupid tricks anymore. If you're stuck there, you can bloody well stay there.
Duncan, please, come back. Come back, Duncan, please.
But Sir Handel's efforts were in vain. Duncan kept moving away from him, and eventually was out of sight. Sir Handel looked back at the bushes to meet a pair of bright, glowing eyes staring back. His own eyes widened with fear, terror, and now regret. His way of escaping, his only way of escaping, was now long gone, and only he was to blame. Duncan slowly opened his eyes. Morning was upon him. He felt the warmth of his fire running through his boiler.
Morning, Duncan.
Morning.
Duncan looked around and saw the other engines outside the shed being readied for their respective tasks. But something felt off. It seemed not everyone was there.
Where's Rusty?
Rusty left earlier. Sir Handel was trapped near Skarloey because of a points failure. Rusty's gone to mend them, and he'll bring them back here.
I saw him there last night when I passed by. He was up to no good as usual.
Oh, really? How so?
Oh, he was going about some creature in the woods, asking for help. Clearly trying to pull another trick on me.
Did he really?
Aye, he must have gotten the idea from that story you told. But I knew better, though.
Skarloey didn't say any more, now displaying a look of concern. Duncan found this rather puzzling.
What? What's wrong? Why are you looking at me like that?
Just then, a familiar horn was heard, tooting in the distance. The engines watched expectantly, and sure enough, the little diesel came round the corner, pulling another engine into the yard.
Sir Handel, are you all right? What were you?
The old engine froze, as did the rest of the fleet, as Rusty came to a stop, fully revealing what was brought in. It wasn't who it was. They obviously knew who it was, but it was the state he was in that sent a strong chill down the engine's boilers. Sir Handel was static and silent. His eyes were wide, his breathing deep and heavy. His entire body, his boiler, dome, cab, funnel, and even his face were covered in deep, long scratches.
Sir Handel, what?
Rusty pulled up alongside.
I tried asking the same thing, but he started screaming. He screamed for nearly a whole minute. He hasn't said a single word since.
An unsettling silence fell upon the sheds. All the engines focused on the horrific attack on their dear friend. If they weren't so focused on him, they would have noticed that Duncan was feeling very disgusted, not just the sight standing before him, but towards himself. He thought back to last night when he saw Sir Handel calling out to him, begging for his help. He remembered how he felt in the moment, seeing it all as one big joke to scare him, as the story of the old iron bridge once did. Now, looking back, remembering Sir Handel's cries and pleas for help, only then did he realize how real they were.